Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Stephanie Coleman with Kansas Lend. I am the autism family educator in Kansas. Lend stands for Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities. We are a workforce training grant funded underneath the Autism Cares Act. That is the funds go through MCHB, Maternal Child Health Bureau. Tonight we are presenting, before I say that, for those of you on Zoom tonight, I want to let you know that we are live on Facebook. And if for some reason the slides will go down and your camera is on, you will show up on Facebook. So if you don't want to be seen on Facebook, just keep your camera off and we will make sure you're not on there. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Crystal Danko is here with us tonight and she will get them answered. For those of you on Facebook, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat as well underneath, and we will get those asked for you as well. And now I am going to turn this over to Erin, and she's going to be presenting on the support and training for employing people successfully, the STEPS program. So really excited to have her. And Erin, I don't see you anymore. So I'm there. You, Erin Sanders-Hahs. Your
Hi,
show
everyone.
now, sister.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So again, my name's Erin Sanders-Hahs. I work for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and I am the STEPS program manager. We love acronyms over here at the state. So as she said, the STEPS acronym stands for Support and Training for Employing People Successfully. So the information that I have for you today is current as of today, which is 3/9/2023. So what is STEPS? STEPS is a first come, first serve voluntary employment incentive program that being operated through the Kansas Working Healthy program for any eligible members of CanCare, which is the Kansas Medicaid program for individuals aged 16 through 64. All potential members need to be currently enrolled or have a pending application for CanCare, so that Medicaid application, to be eligible. And they also need to have a disability determination from Social Security and be receiving cash benefits under Social Security. And STEPS was designed to help members find and maintain a job, with the goal being to show that increasing job opportunities and independent living supports for individuals with disabilities will have improved health outcomes over individuals that maybe aren't with disabilities that aren't working. So there are two types of criteria that must be met in order to enroll in the STEPS program. This is just within the state of Kansas, but we do cover the entire state. So the first is the disability criteria. So STEPS is targeting two different disability population groups. So one group are individuals who get supplemental security income, which is also known as SSI only, and are on the waiver or the wait list for one of the state home and community-based service waivers, that to include the physical disability or the PD waiver, the intellectual developmental disability or the IDD waiver, and the last one is the brain injury or the BI waiver. The second group that we're looking at are individuals who get SSI and or Social Security disability insurance, which is known as SSDI, and who have one of the behavioral health diagnoses that are listed on this slide. So so schizophrenia would also cover things like schizoaffective, PTSD, personality disorders. You know, we can kind of put other diagnoses under those, kind of looking at it from a severe and persistent mental illness perspective. Additionally, someone could kind of be eligible for this program with multiple disabilities, right? A lot of us know that some disabilities have a lot of other co-occurring things that go along with them. So, for example, someone who is receiving SSDI that has a primary behavioral health diagnosis could also have like an IDD diagnosis that qualifies them for a waiver or a wait list. So this person would be eligible because the SSDI and the behavioral health. What the IDD waiver waitlist eligibility brings to the table is some personal assistance services, so services to help somebody in their home, and we'll talk about those. We'll talk about those a little bit later. The second component to eligibility for this program I mentioned is having that disability determination by Social Security. But that person then also has to fall within the financial criteria. So what that means for the STEPS program is that people who are receiving SSDI can have countable income, which is a formula that Social Security uses. Don't ask me to explain it, but they have a term called countable income, and they can be receiving up to 300% of the federal poverty level, and can also accumulate up to $15,000 in resources. So in the state of Kansas, the resource limits for Medicaid are having $2,000 in resources. So that is a pretty significant increase in someone being able to keep more of their earned income and more resources above, you know, just kind of the regular Medicaid program in the state of Kansas. So if that person has countable income that is over 100% of the federal poverty level, they're going to be determined to have a cost share or a premium, which is a monthly fee. But most folks currently on the program have a $0 premium because, you know, most of them aren't working yet. But again, in the state of Kansas, in other Medicaid terms, if someone is making a certain amount of money, they would be determined to have what's called a spend down or a monthly obligation that they would have to pay in order to receive Medicaid services. So for someone with a spend down, those can be multiple thousands of dollars that reset every 6 months. So in order for someone's Medicaid to kick in, if they're on a spend down, they would have to accrue medical expenses up to that amount before their Medicaid card would even kick in. So by having a monthly premium, the maximum I think per month somebody would pay is, I think, $152 a month, which again, still way better than thousands of dollars in spend down. For folks that are on home and community-based service waivers, they get what's called a monthly obligation. They get determined how much out of their benefits or earnings that they can pay towards their own care. And I've seen monthly obligations as high as, you know, $1,000, $1,000+ a month. So either way, looking at either one of those options is daunting to just have medical coverage. So by enrolling in the STEPS program, that spend down could be eliminated, that monthly obligation could be eliminated for either a zero or a way less expensive alternative. So now for individuals that receive SSI, these folks will not have a premium unless their Social Security benefit changes, because in the state of Kansas, and I think this is a national thing. I'm just talking from Kansas right now. So individuals that receive SSI or are eligible for SSI are already eligible for no cost Medicaid. So they wouldn't have to pay out of pocket for a spend down or a monthly obligation anyway, because there are for medical costs, because that's already a part of their benefit being by receiving SSI. So we are an employment incentive program. So participants don't need to be working already in order to join the program. We're primarily looking at people who are maybe unemployed, maybe underemployed, and looking for maybe that next job or another job. But basically, the person needs to be motivated to find and then try to keep a job, or even, you know, the next job in their career path. So STEPS defines employment as working in a competitive and integrated setting for at least 40 hours per month, not a week, per month, and being paid at the federal hourly minimum wage and having those FICA contributions withheld. So competitive and integrated, that is a definition that was established by WIOA, which is an acronym that I cannot completely remember. But it's it's basically a work incentive, or not work incentive, workforce innovation something. But basically it means that,
Erin, sorry, it's Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Which basically,
too many acronyms.
I know there are a lot, and if I ever say an acronym and I don't explain what it is, just say, hey, what does that mean? It's totally fine. But WIOA has a definition of what competitive and integrated means. So basically, a person with a disability it's a job that anyone could get, meaning competitive, anyone could apply for that job, and integrated, meaning that just because they have a disability, that person's not going to get paid any less. They're going to have the same opportunities for pay, advancement, benefits, all of those things. So in Kansas, employment or work experience in something like a sheltered workshop, that unfortunately are not uncommon in the state, would not be considered employment under STEPS, because in those situations they are not competitive. They're typically in connection with some kind of adult day service. So, not anyone can just go work there, and it's typically not integrated because they're there with other people with other disabilities, staffed by people without disabilities. So that's how the STEPS program looks at and defines employment. So there are a few limitations of the program, and a little bit of additional information that's just kind of helpful to know. If someone is already on one of those home and community-based service waivers, STEPS cannot be provided at the same time that they're on that waiver. They do need to choose one program or the other. But we do have a safety net in those situations that I'll also explain a little bit later. Secondly, STEPS cannot duplicate services that are being provided by another entity, such as school programs, maybe pre-ET, which is a program through Kansas Vocational Rehabilitation, VR. Basically, we can't double dip funds. If someone's paying to help someone find work, STEPS can't pay for someone else to, or that provider couldn't double bill and say, oh, we're going to bill VR and we're going to bill STEPS. We can't do that. That's considered Medicaid fraud. So because the federal government has said that schools have some responsibility for providing some type of employment related services, STEPS can't provide additional funding to schools for transition programs, but someone who is in school could theoretically enroll in STEPS. Again, just can't get into that double dipping scenario. But if someone is getting maybe some employment services elsewhere, STEPS could provide some wraparound services. So like voc rehab could cover the employment piece, whereas STEPS could maybe cover some of the in-home supports that somebody needs to be successful. So we can kind of braid funding in that way. And lastly, we use a kind of a standardized functional assessment that we use to determine what services that somebody needs. So all of that's just kind of the eligibility, the criteria to even kind of start looking at STEPS, right? So why choose STEPS? So STEPS can provide waiver-like services while someone is on a waiver waiting list or as an alternative to maybe some other services. And while STEPS can't provide the exact same level of supports that someone could get on one of those waivers, we can get pretty close. And in addition to some of the services, we offer transportation as one of our services, and Kansas is a pretty rural state, you know. I'm in Topeka, not rural. We have pockets of urban, but the majority of our state is very rural, very frontier. And so transportation to get someone to and from work, to and from the store can be a challenge. But that is something that we can provide. STEPS kind of also looks at employment in kind of this holistic way, basically like that combination of employment support and independent living supports addresses more than just one area of somebody's life. You know, much like anyone else that's working needs kind of that combination of home work life balance. We see that as something that's lacking when looking at employment through just an employment lens. You know, people don't exist in a vacuum. We are kind of the product of what goes on around us. So looking at it as, yep, we're just going to find you a job. That's the only important thing. That's not how we look at that. It's the whole person. Also, that kind of promotes a variety of employment options. It's not just about finding a job, like I was saying. It's about finding and building and growing your way through employment. So finding what it is that someone wants to do. So we can work with folks from people that have never worked in their life and are just starting out, to people that may feel stuck in their current job and they want to find something maybe more aligned with their interests. Basically, you know, our belief is that people with disabilities should have the same opportunities to grow in their employment and pursue work that's important to them. So it's not just about finding a job. And as we're kind of talking about, you know, we're looking at the educational system, the transition phase. STEPS also wants to try to continue that momentum of maybe some of those goals that were developed in school at someone's IEP about what are you going to do after school. As parents and stakeholders in a student's life, if you're aware of the current status of waivers and wait lists in the state, the IDD wait list is currently sitting at 10 plus years before someone is going to be offered services to get on that waiver. So all that momentum that's being spent gearing up in school, getting ready for, maybe that 18 to 21-year-old program, getting ready to graduate, to then, graduate on the wait list, to just graduate to the couch. We don't want folks graduating to the couch. So making steps and employment a part of those goals helps get them on the path without having to sit and wait and languish and get bored or what have you, sitting 10 years on a wait list. So those are the things that I think make steps an option for a good option for those folks looking in those transition age services. So kind of how does steps work? I mentioned before that someone can't be receiving a waiver services and steps. They have, like I said, they have to choose one program or the other. But steps does have a safety net in place for folks that come from an HCBS waiver or a wait list. If someone is referred and they're on the wait list, they're not going to lose their spot on that wait list while they're participating in steps. If at any point their name comes up from the wait list and they're offered a waiver slot, they can choose at that time if they want to continue with steps or move to the waiver if that's the more appropriate choice for them. Now, if they stay in steps and decline the waiver, they would still be considered waiver eligible, meaning that at any point after they've been given that offer, if they decide to disenroll from steps and move to the waiver, that spot is protected for them. So they don't go back to the end of the wait list. It's not treated as a denial and they're taken off entirely. So we have that safety net for waitlist folks. If someone is already on a waiver, depending on what services they're getting, maybe they're not happy with waiver services. I don't know, or they just want to try something different. Someone can move from the waiver to steps, and same thing kind of goes. If something happens or they just decide, maybe steps wasn't the right thing for me, I'll go back to the waiver, they can do that. That spot is protected for them. So, we really want to kind of take a no harm approach to this. We're currently still a pilot, but we will be changing that for 2024. But we don't want to do harm. If they have a spot on the waiver, we want to protect that for them. Oh, yeah, that did cover everything. Sorry. I feel like I'm missing something, but no. So now the big thing, these are the big things that really make steps work. These are the services that can be provided to members in steps. So we have pre-vocational services and supported employment. Those are the types of services that are designed to help someone learn employment skills, some of those soft skills like how to talk to coworkers, how to interact with supervisors and coworkers, making sure people get back from breaks on time, to also then helping them find a job, carve a job out for that person, because they've got certain skills that they want to utilize, and then also to maintain that employment long term. Independent living skills are those kind of home and community skills for an individual to live as independently as possible. So, helping teach budgeting, how to do laundry, do dishes, cook a meal, those types of things. Mention transportation. So transportation includes assistance to and from employment related activities. So we can help pay for different methods of transportation, from purchasing a bus pass to maybe paying for some taxis, to having a personal assistant or a PA take the person somewhere. There's a lot of different ways that we can use it. We can use transportation funds, and also include things like essential travel for grocery shopping, banking, if they have to drive to the laundromat to do their laundry, that type of stuff. And then those personal assistant services. I know I've been kind of referencing those throughout, but those are those in-home support. So having a staff come in to somebody's home to help with activities of daily living, like hygiene tasks, eating, bathing, showering, money management, meal prep, all of those different things. So one thing to keep in mind is that pre-vocational services and independent living skills training are kind of time limited. We have those currently set at providing those for 34 hours a month, or not a month, 34 hours over a 90-day period. But if someone needs a little bit more time with those, that's absolutely fine. We can work with that. We can make adjustments if we need to increase how much time. It doesn't matter how fast somebody goes through them or how slowly somebody goes through them. We just have to, as a pilot, we just kind of have to demonstrate. It's like, okay, we'll start at 34. Okay, we had this many people. 34 hours wasn't enough. They needed some more time. And so it's just kind of part of our data collection to see how long someone is utilizing those services. Then let's see, assistive services. So those are medically necessary equipment, devices, home and vehicle modifications that aren't currently under the Medicaid state plan. I'll give you an example. One of our early referrals was a young adult, early 20s, wheelchair user, who the family had to move to a different home, and that home didn't have a wheelchair ramp, and they had stairs to get up into this manufactured home. This 22-year-old guy was having to either crawl and drag himself up the stairs on his hands to get into the home, or have somebody carry him. That's not dignified, respectful. I mean, that's terrible. That's not how none of us, we wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'll just crawl into my house, it's fine. No, that's not acceptable. So we got him on the program, and one of the first things that we were able to do for him was to find a contractor down in his area, got some bids, and we paid for a ramp for him to be able to get in and out of his home. And it's just like, a lot of that stuff we might take for granted, just being able to get in and out of our house. Oh yeah, like open the door, yeah, we're fine. For this guy, early 20s, he's just like, he's so much more independent now, and that has just given him so much hope and just excitement. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm getting out there. I'm getting independent. This is great. And it was just, it just completely changed his world. And then on top of that, now he's also working with providers to help him find employment. So that's the next step, is is helping him find a job, and he's working with staff who, a lot of times, best intentions and all that, he was still relying on his mom to take care of a lot of stuff and handling his call, scheduling appointments and those things. And just having the wheelchair ramp installed, he's like, oh yeah, I can handle my own appointments now. It was just little, I say little, it's a ramp, it's not tiny, but just the world of possibilities just opened up to him, and he's like, wow, I never thought that I could do this. And so it just makes me happy. So sorry, I just get gushy. And then, so the last service that we can provide is what's called community service coordination. And that's basically the case management for the program. So everyone would have a community service coordinator to do that case management for them, with them on the program. So I want to talk a little bit about that community service coordinator piece. So the primary responsibilities of that CSC, I'm gonna shorten it because community service coordination is a mouthful. They can provide some choice counseling, give some opportunities for education about self-directing their services, helping them locate providers of all of these different services, talking through their options, keeping in contact with that member to make sure that all their services are working the way that they should. If there's any issues, making referrals to other services, maybe they need some support with some housing, and basically just kind of being boots on the ground, hub of the STEP services. Now, one of the things that I know, especially for folks that are on the intellectual developmental disability waiver or wait list, is they have a targeted case manager or a TCM. And so a lot of folks are worried because that was one of the only services that retained that case manager piece when Kansas moved to this managed care model, CanCare model for Medicaid. And so a lot of these folks have had the same targeted case manager for years, and they have really good relationships with them. And so people worry, am I going to lose my case manager? Current case managers can enroll as a provider for STEP to be a community service coordinator. So theoretically, someone, if that provider enrolls with us, they can continue to be the case manager for that person. So they lose their TCM, but they keep the same person as a CSC. So I do want to make sure that people are aware of that. We need to build our provider network, and case managers, CSCs, are a big part of that. So if you have a targeted case manager and you're interested in the STEPS program, let the provider know to contact me. Just putting that plug in there right now. But that person is the one who develops the service plan, does kind of all the paperwork that we need. But that case management component is really important to help bring all these different components of the program together. Oops, and I'm pretty sure I clicked off. There we go. Okay, so one of the other benefits of enrolling in the STEPS program is that under the Working Healthy program, we have what are called Working Healthy benefit specialists. And these are people that have very specific training in order to do benefits counseling, which is basically the fancy way of saying they can talk to somebody about what the impact of working and earnings are going to have on somebody's Social Security benefits, and maybe medical benefits. So as part of the enrollment process for the program, we have the referral, or actually we have the benefits specialist get in touch with the referral to schedule a time to do that benefits counseling, and to go over some talking points about the program. But these folks know their stuff. If, a lot of us may know that, there's this myth, if I've got a disability, I'm getting cash benefits from Social Security. If I work, I'm going to lose all my benefits, especially those folks that are on SSI, when that's not entirely the case. Yeah, your benefits may change, but for someone that's receiving SSI, I'll just give you a little kind of snippet. Basically, the way things work with SSI is for every $2 of earned income, wages, they lose $1 in SSI. Now, there's a whole lot of other things that go into that, but one, the person gets to keep their wages, and two, as long as things don't break even, they make enough that then cancels out all of their SSI amount, they get to keep all of that. So regardless, they're still coming out ahead financially by working and being on SSI. For individuals that are on SSDI, earnings aren't going to have an impact on how much they receive in SSDI. But one thing that can happen with employment is, and I don't want to get too down into the weeds about Social Security, but we all have to have so many quarters in order to be able to qualify for Social Security benefits, right? So they've got their SSDI benefit, they're able to keep their earnings, they're accruing more quarters for Social Security, which means that their SSDI could actually increase potentially based on how much they're earning, because all of us pay into that Social Security, that SSDI system. That's what we're paying for when we're paying Social Security out of our paycheck. So again, coming out financially ahead. These are all the things that the benefit specialist can talk to them about. Those SSDI folks can have up to $15,000 in resources. Unfortunately, SSI folks still have to stay within that $2,000 resource limit, but the benefit specialist can talk to them again after maybe they've been working a while, maybe they've gone through a couple different jobs and they're kind of getting on a career track maybe. Hey, what's your goal? Do you want to be able to work yourself off of Social Security benefit? Cool. Do you want to just kind of be able to make enough so that you're not worried about your financial situation and just keeping everything kind of copacetic? They can have that conversation. It's about what the person wants and if that's a goal of theirs or not. They can ask any kind of questions of that benefit specialist about healthcare, and they can do all of this, and they're still keeping their Medicaid, full coverage Medicaid. It's not spend down Medicaid, it's not monthly obligation, full coverage Medicaid. They can also still, if their employer offers health insurance, they can take the employer's health insurance, because Medicaid's always the payer of last resort. So the less Medicaid has to spend on somebody, they're happy. So if they're able to get that insurance through their employer, then they can use that. Again, a lot of this just kind of comes around as like, well, Social Security says I can't work because that's why I have a disability. I have a disability and I can't work. That's why they said I can get cash. But oddly enough, these are Social Security kind of incentive programs. This is the way Kansas is doing it. Okay, so all of this, how does someone get started in steps, right? talking about all this cool stuff. I think it's cool. I hope y'all think it's cool too. So how do you get started? Referrals can come from anywhere. So school programs, student, parents, if you're working with if you're on the IDD wait list, the community developmental disability organizations, a case manager there could send a referral. If you're working with voc rehab, maybe doing the pre-ETS program while they're still in school, it's like, hey, we're going to be closing their pre-ETS case. We think they'd be a good fit for the STEPS program. They can send referrals. And basically all of those referrals come to me. I am STEPS and STEPS is me. That's kind of what it feels like. Everything for the program comes through me as the program manager. So they can email, there's a referral form on our website. But you could also just shoot me an email. You can mail a paper copy of it to me. You can send it by carrier pigeon for all I care. I'll take your referral however I can get it. And then once I get that referral, we've got all the questions on there to answer that helps me figure out if someone's going to meet criteria for our program. So I'll check all of that. I will confirm. A lot of people get confused about what Social Security benefit they're receiving. They're like, oh, I'm getting SSI. And then they say, they say, yeah, I'm getting about $1,000, $1,200 a month. I'm like, that is not SSI, my friend. That is way too high for it to be SSI. Because I think, I took down my sticky note. The 2022 SSI maximum that someone could have received was $841. I think, I don't know if it's over 900 this year or not. That amount fluctuates. The max fluctuates for SSI. So I can usually tell by the amount that someone is receiving in benefits what type of benefit it is. So I just check that. If I'll check with their can care organization, yep, 913. Thanks so much. So
it increases with the
cost of
for
living.
Social Security. Yep.
So I just didn't have it in front of me. So thanks for that. So yeah, it fluctuates. Confirm that information. Once I've confirmed all of that and it's like, yep, they meet criteria, then I send that information on to the working healthy benefit specialist. So within a few days, the person will hear from them. Hey, calling to set up your benefits counseling and your talking points for the STEPS program. And so they'll go through that with the referral. And around the same time, usually about the same time, I'm also sending that information, that referral information, to their can care managed care organization. So in Kansas, that's Aetna, Sunflower, and United Healthcare for 2023. And someone from DMCO will contact the referral to set up their services assessment, which basically just it goes through and helps figure out what supports and services that somebody would need for the program to try to be their most successful. Once that assessment's complete, we talked about that community service coordinator. So kind of the earlier in that enrollment process that the CSC can be identified, the smoother that enrollment and the service plan and all of those things kind of go. So after that assessment's done, the CSC works with the member and the family to figure out who's going to provide the services that were identified in the assessment, and start working on all the paperwork to get someone up and running with the program. This process typically takes 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how everything comes together. When the CSC is identified, we struggled with some of that early on, because again, our network was small. So it would take some time to get some things set up. And in small rural communities, you might be able to find a CSC who's going to help with the other pieces. How do we find a PA? Who's in our area that's providing those pre-vocational services? We have provider lists on our website, and kind of like I mentioned with the targeted case managers and the CSCs, tell them to, hey, contact me to enroll. They can do that with any provider. If there's an organization or an agency or somebody that someone in their community knows about, it's like, I want to use this person, or that provider, send that provider to me and I will enroll them if they want to enroll. So I will always take provider referrals too. The other part of why it can kind of take 6 to 8 weeks is that the service plan that we use that identifies the services, how much they're going to cost, who's going to provide them, those kinds of things. Because of the way we work, those service plans can only start on the first day of a month. So we can't start services for somebody in the middle of a month. So sometimes that timing comes down to, I have certain dates by the middle of a month that I have to follow, that, this is the deadline to be able to start the program the immediate next month. And if it's after that date, it's like 2 months out. So we're in March now. We're coming up on the deadline to be able to start someone in April, within a few days, like a couple of days actually. So if I get a referral today, odds are we can't get them started for April 1st, but we could get them started for May 1st. So that's kind of how that works. So referral from anywhere, send it to me. I'll check it. I'll get it moved along, and we'll work with you to try to get you enrolled in the program as quickly as we can. So I get a lot of questions at these things. And there are some that I get quite a bit. So one is, what if someone loses their employment while they're on the program? So this is where we have another safety net. What we do with that is we do what's called a temporary unemployment plan. So the person would have 2 months to be able to work to become reemployed, get their hours back up at or above 40 hours a month. They've got that time, and if they've had the services to help them find a job, we can kick those back up and ramp those back up to get back in there to help them find work again, or to increase their work. And in order to get those set up, we also use the working healthy benefits specialist to help manage some of that. So if someone loses a job and they want to get back to work, they have that safety net of that temporary unemployment plan to have time to do that. Second, will I lose my benefits from working? And we kind of talked about that a little bit, but this can again be more accurately answered by the benefits specialist, which is precisely why we use them to do benefits counseling prior to that enrollment. They can talk about what that situation is going to be for somebody, and how those benefits would change. And I won't go through all the SSI stuff again because I already talked about that. So does the person lose their targeted case manager enrolling? Again, we talked about that, maybe. So it depends on whether that provider decides to enroll as a community service care coordinator with it. I look at this as kind of having multiple hats. Someone can have multiple hats, but you'd look really silly wearing them all at the same time. So you're working with Joe over here, who is on the IDD waiver. They're getting targeted case management. That CSC, or that case manager, to use a general term, can be cross-trained. They can have that TCM training. They can have that community service coordinator training. So Joe's over here, DD waiver, targeted case management. Sally might be getting, she's on the waiting list. She doesn't have services yet. That case manager can be cross-trained and be like, hey, do you want to try the STEPS program? I can be your case manager. They would have the CSC hat. So they have the targeted case manager hat on with Joe, take that off to put on the CSC cap with, I thought I said Sally, but I don't remember what I said. The other person. And so you just it's just putting on and taking off different hats. When you're working with one person, you're doing one type of case management. When you're working with a STEPS member, you're doing that person's doing that community service coordination. So, so they could keep their case manager. It would just be under a different framework. And then another one that we get a lot is, what if I'm already working with vocational rehabilitation? So I mentioned that a little bit earlier. If someone's working with VR, maybe they're going through that pre-EAT or pre-ET program through the school, that person could still enroll in STEPS, because we could wrap some of those services around somebody. For example, like you've got, there's a disability that requires having some assistance in your home, maybe to help get dressed or to help you with your meals. VR is there to support you with your employment goals, while STEPS could be there to provide for those in-home supports. If you're familiar with kind of how VR works, after about 90 days of stable employment, once someone's on the job, VR is going to close that case. Even if someone's going to need ongoing support, they typically close that case after 90 days. And if someone needs ongoing support, they're going to have to open another case, which they can do. There's no limit to however many cases you can open with VR. But it's a process. If they're working with VR over here, we've got STEPS going on over here. They're working together. When that VR case closes, we also have a lot of VR contractors that are providers for the STEPS program. They could theoretically, again, if that provider enrolls with us, they could keep the same provider that they had working with them on VR to help provide that ongoing, longer term employment support. So we can absolutely work with folks that are already working with voc rehab. And we could be a long-term solution for that. So those are that's kind of my spiel. That's it's a lot of information. It's a complicated program with a lot of parts, but again, we're looking at this holistically. So any questions, comments, I'm open to hearing what y'all got.
So if you have questions, if you're on Zoom, feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask them to Erin. If you are on Facebook, just put them in the comment section and we will get them answered for you. You can also feel free to put them, if you don't want to speak, you can put them in the Zoom chat as well, and we'll get them asked for you. While we're waiting to see if we have any of those, I have several for myself. So
okay.
So you mentioned that the IDD wait list, if you decide to do STEPS, you can go back to the waiver. How long do you have?
What do you mean, how long do you have?
So, well, like if in 5 years, you're like, oh yeah, STEPS just didn't work out for me, or in 2 years, STEPS doesn't work out for me, can I go right back to my waiver spot? Like, how long will they hold my spot?
Oh, okay. The spots are held indefinitely. So like if someone's on the wait list, then they, like I said, they would be able to continue to move up the wait list in the spot based on the date that they went onto the wait list.
Right.
So that would move up. But yeah, it's
So
if your waiver.
what if I'm already on the wait list? Or I mean, what if I'm already on the waiver?
Yeah. And then if you're already on the waiver, they will hold that spot as long as you're on steps.
Okay. Where's my, you answered that question. How long are you on steps? How long does the steps program last?
However long you need it.
Okay.
Some people, you know, we have Working Healthy also has other programs that someone could, quote unquote, I don't want to say graduate's not really the right word, but
Transfer or
you can transition between. There's just the Working Healthy program, which is, it's an umbrella term and it's also a program in and of itself. But basically those other programs are only available to people once their Social Security has turned into SSDI, essentially. They can't be receiving SSI and go to Working Healthy or our older sister program called the Work Program. The Work Program is similar to STEPS, but in that it can provide those in-home support. In certain cases, they can provide some of that employment support components. And again, both of those programs are indefinite as long as you continue to meet program criteria. But there are other programs that someone could move to if their situation changes, but there's not a definitive, okay, you can only be on steps for 2 years. That's it.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. What if an individual, you were talking about how they could go right from high school to steps. What if they wanted to do a trade school or college? Would steps pay for that, or do you have to go through VR for that piece?
Yeah, in those cases, to pay for any, if there's that need to pay for training or school, those are things that are going to be more geared towards going through VR for those. We are employment. But if someone does want to go to school, maybe they want to work while they're going to school, they can be on steps while they're going to school. We just can't pay for their school.
Gotcha. I think my last question is, so, excuse me, TCMs can be the case coordinators here, case managers. I'm not sure what they were, but anyways, are they paid the same rate?
I want to say, I think they do not currently pay the same. The waiver, TCM has a rate, and I know some people might pay out of pocket for those on a sliding fee scale. I think TCM pays at 42 something an hour. Community service coordination pays at $50 an hour.
Okay.
I do.
So they wouldn't be losing money if we talked our TCM into working with us.
They wouldn't.
Gotcha.
They wouldn't lose money for sure.
Okay.
As of right now, I do know that there are some things in the works to try to work to get TCMs a higher rate, which, if that's the case, we'll look at our rates and we'll try to be comparable, because that's,
Yes, yeah. I gotcha. I hear you. I'm listening. I think that's it. Does anybody else have any questions?
This is Crystal. I was just wondering if you could list your contact information, your phone number or your website. Thank you.
Here's the website. I have that on the next screen. I don't know how I didn't get my usually I put a copy of my business card as a slide in here. I will go ahead and I'll type my email into the chat, and then
Are they on any of those documents I shared? Those 3 that I sent out?
I believe the FastFact has my email address on it. If it